Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and since 2010, I've run the Songwriters on Process website, where you can find more than 200 conversations with songwriters about the creative process. I'm not here to talk about tour stories, band drama, how a band got its name, or favorite foods. My goal is to treat songwriters as writers, plain and simple. This is an intelligent conversation about the writing process between two writers. And today's interview is with Kelsey Waldon. Kelsey has a new album out called No Regular Dog. It's out August 12th on Oh Boy Records. I like this conversation because my favorite ones are always when I get answers I've never heard before. And when I asked Kelsey about her writing routine, and she made it clear that she can write anywhere, inside, outside, at her desk. But she did say that she does like to write. She gets a lot of ideas writing on her porch, something about looking at the outside, being outside, and that's pretty common. But when I asked her about time of day or time, when she gets her best writing done, she said it's the transition into the seasons, the time when we're going into fall, or the time when we're going into spring. That tends to be when she writes the most. And I've never heard that before. If you listen to the interview, she talks about why that might be. She also has been writing since age 9. She said her family does have scraps of paper that she wrote songs on back to when she was only 9 years old. And we talked about journal writing as well. She said that she has a lot of old journals, but her family, she comes from a long line of journal writers. I think she said her grandmother was a big journal writer, and they have all those old journals. And I thought, gosh, wouldn't that be great to go back through some of those for song ideas or words? And she's also a big reader as well. Again, more proof that great songwriters read a lot. She's a voracious reader, loves Southern literature. But as I've always said, you don't read, you're not going to be a good writer. And one more thing, the yellow legal pad. This comes up. I've heard this from Hayes Carl told me this, and Kelsey mentioned that Dolly Parton said this as well. Nothing like a good yellow legal pad to write on. Oh, and one more thing. Waldon's latest album was produced by Shooter Jennings, Grammy Award-winning artist Shooter Jennings. Jennings, of course, has worked with Brandi Carlile, Tanya Tucker, Duff McKagan, many others. And I interviewed Jennings maybe 5 years ago on my website. So check that out on songwritersonprocess.com. It's not the podcast, just the audio, just the written transcript of it, but it was still a great interview. So check that out there again on songwritersonprocess.com, where you can find about 250 interviews with songwriters just about the songwriting process. So with that, here is my interview with Kelsey Waldon. Outside of songwriting, do you do any other types of writing, whether it's journaling or anything like that? Or are you strictly a songwriter?
Well, I do journal. I used to journal quite a bit more than I do now. That's run in my family as well. We've got journals literally from my great grandmother that she wrote during the Great Depression, and
Wow.
literally just keeping, growing up in the Great Depression in Western Kentucky, obviously. And, my great granny, my great granddaddy, and just all the journals she kept. And I know this maybe doesn't answer the question, but then also her daughter, my granny, my grandmother, she wrote songs and obviously never, had a career out of it. But, she has these folders upon folders of just songs that she wrote. And it's pretty incredible. And I do keep journals. I used to do it a lot more than I do now. I have to say, I think I just am I just have a lot more responsibilities now, because I'm doing it as, I think when I first started out, that's all I did was just stream of consciousness, even sometimes just write down. I'd get home at night and just fill up paper over paper. I mean, I have them all even here under my desk. I mean, I have so many notebooks literally just laying, laying
Nice.
everywhere. I'm in my little office here, but yeah, there's no telling. I was actually looking at some of these the other day from, I don't know, 12 years ago. And I was just like, damn girl, like, okay. Like you were just, you're getting after it in the journal there. So, I do journal. But like I said, recently it's really been, especially for the past couple of years and for this latest record, it's been about songs.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
do you go back, I guess two-part question. Do you go back to those journals you wrote ever and look for, may not look intentionally, but maybe that brings up song ideas, or maybe those of your family members, and think about, gosh, maybe that's a great backdrop for a song or something like that.
Yeah, I have before. I'd really like to obtain some of my great grandmother's journals. But I don't get to talk about this a lot, but when I first moved, what got me back to Nashville and the reason why I was able to come, because it was obviously really expensive to move, where from where I came from. And this isn't like in my bio or anything. I actually have a songwriting degree from Belmont University.
Oh no, I did. I actually, so
okay.
Maybe that's on like, I hate to say it's on a Wikipedia, but I feel like now that you mention that, I did see that somewhere yesterday, but I forgot where it was.
Yeah. Well, I don't talk about it a lot. Well, mainly because, I don't know. It's just it was such a different part of my life. And, I don't think a piece of paper makes you a songwriter, and I would have been one anyway. I have to say, just talking about journals and journalism, I think one of the main things I took away from those classes, and when I first moved to Nashville, I'd never really been made, by professors to kind of turn in something every week. I'd never I think maybe the discipline that taught me was, I have to say, like, that's probably what I took away from it. My professors would make me write. And the stream of consciousness thing, everything we could do to jog memory, to jog, any kind of idea. And, I never really had thought about songwriting that way up until that point. So I am thankful, for kind of that opening that up for me. I mean, they would be like, okay, go to the coffee shop and pick up the Tennessean and read it and come back with a song. Yeah. And I was just kind of like, oh, like, okay, but I obviously am a huge fan of so many, I mean, I got all these biographies in here. I mean, I just got done reading Guy Clark's biography and yeah, it's just really interesting to it's really inspiring, I think, to see how everybody treats it. So
I just had this interview before you with a songwriter, and it dawned on me, that if you ever read interviews with writers like novelists, they will always say, get your butt in the seat every day and write. Like no novelist says, just do it when you feel like it. Don't rush it. Every novelist says every day you got to write, whether it's pages or number of words or anything, or for a time. But it's funny because songwriters often are, don't force it. Just do it when the inspiration strikes. But it sounds like you're more of the discipline type, right? Like, is it important, like, to kind of do something in some fashion every day, some creative outlet?
Yeah, sure. I actually think it's a little bit of both. I wouldn't say I'm as disciplined as, like, some of these. I don't go to an office every day and, like, I mean, obviously, I'm kind of very passionate about my artist career, and I don't like I say, go to the office every day and write a song, but I think it's a little bit of both. I feel like we would like to think that it's as easy as that, maybe, when we get older, but I feel like it's like I said, I feel like I just writing songs for me now is very different than it was. It's the same, but it's different. It's different than it was, maybe when I'm 34 now, but it's different when say I was 20 years old, because I wasn't doing it as a career then. I mean, I like now, it's like I get to live my dream and survive my dream and do what I'm passionate about. But that comes with more responsibility. So I do think sometimes, to answer your question, I guess I'm saying, like, you just have to be open to it. But I do think it kind of takes sitting your ass down a little bit. I mean, you just because, like, there's so many times that I wouldn't have wrote something had I not sat down and been like, I need to write something, right now. Like, I mean, I just, if I hadn't taken days out to write, because I just think there's too much for me to think about these days. I don't know. I feel like the inspiration of the muse is still there. It's not that pure muse is still there, but I think I just have to be open to receiving it, and also just sitting down and being like, I'm going to write a song or I'm going to write something, like, even if it's bad, So, I think it's a little bit of both, because I do think, things, and that doesn't mean that, like, something wouldn't just pour out of you in 5 minutes, but I think you might have to sit down and get your notepad out,
Right.
I mean, I've had songs that I was just like, yep, that's exactly what I needed to say, and I'm not going to change it. And then I've had songs, that I sat with for a couple months and decided something needed to come back stronger, when I was ready to say that. I mean, I have a song on this new record called Progress Again on No Regular Dog. And I love how it turned out. And that was a song that I wrote a really long time ago. Like, I wrote it. I mean, I feel like a couple albums ago, like maybe 2 albums ago, I had wrote it, but then during the pandemic, I opened up my journal and that song was in there. And just like a notebook I had of songs. And I was like, I've always thought that song was really good, but it just wasn't finished yet. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it, but then, like, I was able to finish it. Like, I don't know, I was able to, like, write, I felt like a stronger verse and a stronger, like I thought the chorus was great, but I just thought the verses were kind of like, kind of weak. And so I rewrote it. And, but that was just from a simple melody and chorus I had from, like, years ago, and ended up putting it on the record. And it was like, one of Shooter's favorite songs. I mean, I loved how it turned out. I mean, it was, just gorgeous. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm just saying that to tell people, don't lose faith in, like, something that isn't quite there yet, or whatever.
So let's talk about the lyrics, because songwriters tend to be very particular about this part of it. Are you a pen and paper person or a computer person when it comes to writing the lyrics down?
I'm not a computer person. Not one bit. Not one bit. I type it out after. I mean, usually because I have to. I mean, to send to my label and stuff and everybody, and to just have it for, like, I'll type it out for, like, when I record, if we record the songs for a record in the studio. So, obviously I can have them and read them there. But yeah, when I'm writing it, I love, see, I got these little,
see, that's what I want. I want the visuals.
I got these black wing pencils. This is my shit right here. These are the Woody Guthrie ones, I think. I have a bunch of them, but I love these pencils, and I love a clean, huge sheet of paper.
So that's what I was going to say. I find, right, some songwriters, it's got to be a certain color of ink, a certain brand of pen. I mean, really, like the the descriptions I hear, I mean, I could tell you so many stories. Hayes Carl told me that he has to go to, I think it's Office Depot. It's got to be a certain office. I think it's Office Depot, and it's got to be a yellow legal pad, I think is what he told me. And
I like yellow legal pads too. I like the legal pads as well. Yeah.
But
I mean, I'm not that picky when it comes to, I would write with anything that, I mean, listen, I've had to, I've written on the back of napkins. I've written on the back of, or jotted something down in my phone, like on my notes or whatever. I mean, it just depends.
But you show me that stack. You show me those pens or those pencils. So obviously that's what you first go for, right?
Yeah. I just love those pencils. I just love, I don't know. I just, definitely a pencil over a pen though. Writing, scratching things out with a pen is just hard. I just kind of want to have a little more freedom than it's kind of like there when you write with a pen. But I love a yellow legal pad too. I'm with Hayes. There's something about that legal pad. Dolly Parton always said she used a yellow legal pad. So
it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
But that's okay. So that was kind of my next question. I think for me, at least as a writer, a ritual is important. Whether it's time of day, room, chair, because if it's happened before in that place, then who knows, maybe it's superstition, but it might happen there again. So
yeah.
How important is the ritual? Do you have a favorite room, chair, time of day, things you have to have with you, whether it's a type of drink, anything like that, to feel like you will have an effective writing session?
Right. To be quite honest, I obviously don't have a ritual for every day right now because I'm in the middle of an album cycle and I'm doing a lot of work. So it's like, I never know when something's going to pop up. And on tour, it's just like, that's just really hard. On tour, I kind of have to, if I have an idea, just, put the idea wherever I can. I mean, I carry a notebook on the road, but I feel like it's kind of hard to complete an idea because I'm wearing too many hats, on the road, to be quite honest. But as far as like when I'm at my house, like if I have time to be in one place, because that's kind of really, honestly, I feel like that's what's fruitful for me is to be in one place. I've written a lot of songs on my back porch. I know that sounds very stereotypical, but my little table out there, just a glass of water, ice water. I've written a lot of songs out there on that back porch. I'm pointing at it. It's right out my window. But man, I've written songs for my album White Noise. I wrote a lot of those songs up there at a cabin up on a Kentucky Lake. I just stayed up there for like about a week or so and I wrote a lot of the songs from that album up there. And I also wrote a lot of songs from that album at a desk by a window, and that's kind of where I am right now. So I've also wrote songs in here in my little office, but I feel like those are kind of my places that are comfortable, I don't know about a certain time, probably in the evening sometimes. I don't know. I feel like seasons are also very, summer is always not a good, I feel like spring and like coming on spring, and I feel like going into fall, those are always very like, I don't know, something about like that transition is always very inspiring to me. So yeah, I have to say I haven't written a new tune in a minute, to be quite honest. For a while there, I was really spitting them out, but it's hard for me. I know a lot of artists feel this way. It just gets hard, like when you're kind of in the middle of when you start like putting an album out. I think just so much stuff kind of, and that's where the discipline comes in, right? Like, that's why I feel like you do have to have a little more as you like kind of get further into this, because because if not, like if you don't have it, it's just like you might not. I mean, you got to have time to write, you know?
Yeah.
That's what
Uh,
we do. I mean, it's not like I'm in high school anymore, just locked up in my room, just writing songs, you know?
right. But it's funny you say that because I've heard a lot of songwriters tell me that they deliberately don't write on tour because it's and so they use the phrase, oh, I always hear is, filling the well. So the tour is the time when they
Yeah.
deliberately do not write so that they know that when they get off tour, like they're ready to go.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the windows and being on the porch, and I can't help but wonder, like, is there something about being outside when you're writing and maybe looking out on nature that is that can be kind of stimulating? Because you also mentioned seasons, and so there's got to be something there, whether it's the leaves or the whatever it is. But do you find that being outside or being able to see the outdoors can be an effective place to write from?
I think so. I think sometimes just the sounds of everything and the bugs and the tranquility, I think, of just like, I don't know, there's something really just kind of like there's some kind of clarity there, I think, for me. And just being alone and having like a focused idea. And I think just sometimes like the changing of things, it's interesting you talk about like going on tour and like that's the filling up of the well. It's like maybe that's what it is for me with like some of these different, parts of the year. It's like you live through this whole, thing, and then you're kind of like, okay, now I stop and now I have time to write about it. But I honestly think I could be probably more disciplined about that throughout the year if I probably think I could, and I probably think I should.
A lot of songwriters have told me, and maybe this is just because people have been in the house for for a
Yes.
long period of time, that they get song ideas doing mundane activities, gardening,
Oh
washing
yeah.
dishes, folding clothes. I heard, in fact,
Driving.
Emily Scott Robinson, she told me vacuuming. Right. And I've heard that a few times. So those, yeah, driving I've heard. So let's maybe separate those. Do you get song ideas around the house when you're doing those things that require little, if any, brain power?
I do all the time, and that's like part of I think that really has a lot to do with why maybe you mentioned the window and nature, and um I think everything that I enjoy to do, I have a big old lush garden out there, which gets, I've grown something every year for as long as I can remember. Um, and obviously, I come from a family of farmers and whatnot, but yeah, I always say those types of things, and we got the chickens out here and everything. I love all that. All that stuff helps me. It helps me write songs, I mean, it helps me like feel like a normal person, feel like I can have, I think especially like during the pandemic, it's like life slowed down a lot, and like I really needed that, slow living, just like living in life, like not just on the road, like living like within, living in life, I mean, I guess the road is life, but it's I don't know, it's a different kind of life, you're not really, I don't know, I feel like maybe you miss so much of what happens, like at home or anything like that. So I do think those things, yeah. I mean, driving, I have like the song Tall and Mighty. That song came to me, most of that song came to me while driving. I've been thinking about it though for a while. See, that's the thing. It's like if I'm really in an inspired place, I can be thinking about sometimes like a hook or a line or a phrase. Like I'll think about it sometimes. I might chew on it for like days. I might just be like while I'm gardening, while I'm doing whatever, while I'm driving. And then it's like, finally, it's like it marinates and marinates and marinates. And then it's just like, boom, like it just falls out. And, even from the youngest, my youngest days, I started probably writing songs. I don't know. We have some pieces of paper that say like Kelsey age 9, like verse and chorus, songs. I don't know how I knew how to divide anything into a verse and chorus at that age, but I did. And then probably about like 12 or so, when I started playing guitar, that's when I started writing songs, or attempting to. So, and then back home, it was like, I don't know, that's kind of all. There wasn't a lot to do. So I just feel like I was like really hyper focused on that,
Yeah. So how important is, do you do a lot of reading on the side? And if you do, what do you like to read?
I actually love to read, and I feel like I'm going to say what a lot of other people say. I know some people actually do read. I feel like I have so many books that I wish I read more. I mean, some of them I have read, but that's another thing I think that takes discipline. It's, gosh, I mean, at the end of the night now, it's just like I'm usually exhausted, so I just go to bed. But I do read, and I love to read. And I mean, ever since I was a kid, that was a big, I think that was also just like kind of why I even had a standard in my head. I think of like good lyrics and stuff like that, and also like discovering people like Townes Van Zandt and John Prine when I was in high school, and Nancy Griffith and stuff like that. But yeah, I love, Guy Clark's biography was just incredible. It was written by Tamara Salviano. It was gorgeous. And very inspiring. So I love that. One of my favorite authors from Kentucky is also a guy named Silas House. I think he's wonderful. I just read his book, Southernmost. I've got Marissa Moss's book here, Her Country. I'm still wanting to read it. She sent it to me. But I do read. I don't read as much as I'd like to, but I love, I feel a lot better when I do read. So,
well, I noticed that, I mean, it's pretty obvious to me that those songwriters who do a lot of reading typically write better lyrics. I mean, I know there are exceptions to that, but that's not really I don't think that's a very difficult concept to grasp. I mean, if you read language, you're going to write better words.
For sure. Yeah.
So do you find that as you're reading those authors, is it not, there's certainly the level of just it washing over you, but is there an awareness as you're reading of, oh, that's great writing, that sounds good, and I guess the impact that has on your songwriting?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a mixture of that. It was always a mixture of reading great writing, but also falling in love with, great songwriters at a young age, because, that was kind of my standard. When I heard someone like John Prine when I was like 16, I don't know, I kind of knew, and I fell in love with even like Bob Dylan when I was like, one of the first songs I ever wrote was literally like a rip off of a Bob Dylan song, because I was trying to figure it out. I honestly, I have a lot of people that have told me that, like, about themselves, songwriters. But yeah, I think just, listening to people like that, and like Woody Guthrie, and, just stuff that, even just like old mountain music that I loved, and, the simplicity, but the complexity, of those lyrics. I think all that really set a standard for me.
It reminds me of what Ernest Hemingway once said: all writers should go to art galleries. And his whole thing was like, get outside of absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you'll get inspired by other types of artistic, of other types of art, not just the art that you dabble in.
Yeah. And I took, when I was in community college, and this was years ago, over a decade ago now, but I still have all my poetry books. I took poetry class, and where we just wrote poems, and it was wonderful. I mean, I loved it. I wish I wrote more just strictly poems now. I mean, maybe I do in song form, but that was something I really, really enjoyed, in English and all that was always like, those were kind of my subjects, for sure. I mean, even at a young age, I'd read like all the kind of like big, I don't know, like all the books I feel like that you should read, like,
Yeah.
when you're like a kid. I definitely read them. Like that's what I was doing. Just like a nerd. Like I was in there on the couch waiting for my mom to come pick me up. Just I had very high accelerated reader points as a child. So proud to say. But yeah. And my poetry class, it's just like that's where I learned about just a lot of poets I love, like Lucille Clifton and Mary Oliver. And I mean, I don't know, there's just there's so many that I love.
I wish that was a sentiment shared among songwriters. I could honestly, I mean, I've interviewed, like I said, over 200 at this point. I could probably count on two hands number of songwriters who tell me they read poetry ever. And I just, it always amazes me because this is not a debate about whether lyrics are poetry, because that's another thing altogether, but
of course.
So few of them read poetry. I mean, so few. And I think, I know that lyrics may not be poems, but still poetry is about how language sounds. How could you not,
Yes.
How could that possibly not help you to see poems on the page, listen to how the words sound and think, wow,
the rhythm. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't get it.
It's the rhythm. I mean, I know that for me, that really clicked for me, especially in songwriting, was like the rhythm between poetry and songwriting. And I think that's why I loved a lot of songwriters I loved, because I felt like they were poets. I mean, honestly, like you could take away the music and it was just like straight poetry. So yeah, no, I love poetry. And I feel like every time, I have Johnny Cash's book too, like his book of poems, and it's just really inspiring. This interview has actually really inspired me to get out all my poetry books again.
And that's it for the latest episode of Songwriters on Process. Don't forget, you can find all of my interviews with over 200 songwriters on my Songwriters on Process website at songwritersonprocess.com, going all the way back to 2010. You can read them, watch them, or listen to them. So until next time, thanks for listening.